Imagine having to compete with yourself from 10, 15 years ago. The younger you should be a bit fitter, probably a little bit lighter, maybe even a bit faster. But the new you is more intelligent, smarter, more useful, more rounded, better for the world. Well, we've now got the bike equivalent of that. This is the DR-Z4S and SM. It's back from the past, massively updated, but still with the same spirit. And I cannot wait to see what it's like. First little spin out on the new DR-Z4S. What's important is this thing is not a competition bike, and by that I mean it's not a full out and out enduro machine, and compared to when it came out, the original DRZ came out, it's further from those competition machines because they've become more and more specialized and more aggressive, and this is treading a sweet spot as a trail bike. That's what they've tried to do with it. We're not looking for flat out rally performance. We're not looking for any racing pretense. This is a bike that's just fun to go trail riding on. And as such, it's a little soft, a little heavy compared to an enduro bike, but that means it's fun and forgiving to ride and easy to get on with. It doesn't have a snappy, angry engine that stalls immediately. It doesn't have a sharp clutch that's really heavy. It doesn't try and pull itself out of your hands every 5 minutes. It's a bike that doesn't really exist. The closest thing would probably be the CRF 300L, which is a good bike, but that's almost, for a lot of people, a little far the other way sometimes, a little too soft, a little too slow. And this DRZ is looking to fill that void. As the fun dual sport do anything motorcycle, which hopefully it can do. And first impressions are, it seems very sweet, which is exactly what it needs to be. Easy, calm, and a bike you'd want to trail ride all day on. We're having a little bit of a play now, and I've got the bike set into C throttle mode, which is the softest throttle mode, and the ABS on full, just to try it out of curiosity. And it does stop you locking the front, unless you lean over. And I've got the gravel mode traction control on, which is actually quite impressive. And in the straight line on this bit, the ABS that's stopping the bike reasonably well, given that we're on road tyres. And it's quite slippery. But that is pretty good, that. So now I'm going to have a little change up. I'm going to flick my mode into B mode throttle, and I'm going to turn the ABS off on the rear wheel, which I think I need to be stopped to do. So that's front ABS only. And at this pace, which I would call a fast trail pace, it feels lovely. It's compliant. It's way more fun to ride with a bit of pace on this stuff than heavy adventure bike would be. Oh, so far this DRZ is exactly what I wanted it to be, and I think what most people wanted it to be. Super easy to ride, squishy, docile, but with enough left in the tank that you can hit the trails a bit harder, turn the throttle a bit more, and fire the front wheel up and over stuff. It's a very, very good balance. Let's face it, one of the most important tests for this bike isn't the horsepower or the ABS or the riding position, it's that one. Because if anyone's ridden off-road for more than 15 minutes, you always end up here. And that's one of the big arguments against riding off-road on the bigger bikes, is what do you do when you drop it? Obviously have good friends, get them to pick you up once they've finished taking photos, but people want to be able to pick their own bikes up. So to try and make this a fair test, I'm going to do it left-handed, one-handed, and I'm going to do it while talking, so hopefully it's not too much, but they're pretty light. So right on the end of the handlebar, and I can keep talking while I pick it up, just. That is a lot lighter than a full-size twin adventure bike. And if you're intending to go outside your comfort zone, this is where you should be aiming. Yes, DR-Z. Dr. Z, she's got some party in her. And that's what I mean though, you can be just riding it super traily and cruisy and just chilling out, and then when you want to hit something or turn the throttle a bit harder, there's enough left in the tank to do that. It's got enough suspension travel, control and power. So the big news, the DR-Z4 is back. We all knew that. We heard it at EICMA last year. We're excited for it. There's been quite a lot of various opinions about whether it's too expensive, whether it's not changed enough, and I just want to shut a few of those down first, just so we can concentrate and get on with the rest of the review. Now straight up, it is quite different. You may not look it, but it's one of those classic Suzuki things where when you start delving into it, every little part of the engine seems to be different. There are a few old components still on there, so the barrel, I think the cam chain tensioner blade, the input shaft for the gearbox, like we're nitpicking. Small parts are the same, but valves, piston, head, crankcases, lots and lots of changes throughout the engine, not only to get it through the Euro 5 plus emissions, which is the bane of all manufacturers these days, but also on top of that to make it more durable, more reliable, better for all-round work. Chassis wise, we've got updated forks, we've got upside down forks now. It's hard to believe that the last one still had the other way up suspension. Perhaps that should be upside down now. It's been so long of upside down forks. And importantly, it's got things like ABS, which is switchable, gravel mode traction control. They've not just chucked these things on as a token effort to the bike either, because particularly with rider aids, there are rider aids and then there are rider aids. There are the ones that are put on the bike to tick a box on a spec sheet and keep it safe. They don't help you particularly, they just stop crashes. And then the other type of rider aids are ones that are developed in line with what the bike's going to be used for. And I'm pleased to discover that this DR-Z has exactly that. It's got an off-road programmed ABS mode, so you can ride it on the trails, brake really hard, and instead of just kicking you off the brake straight away, it lets you load the fork, it lets you stop pretty quickly. The same with the traction control, they've remapped the gravel mode of the traction control. So if you've ridden it on their adventure bikes, it's a different system on this, it's remapped, and now it gives you a lot more slip. So you can put it in gravel mode with the ABS on and ride pretty well off-road. And for new riders and people who are stepping into off-road, that's perfect. That gives you the slide and the slip and the feeling to develop that off-road quick reaction skills without the massive high side or tuck in the front and crash it. For super experienced off-road riders, you're just going to turn it off. But you can turn off front ABS and rear ABS, which is important if you're looking to push what you can do with this machine. Likewise, traction control, easy to turn off. Now what I want to start by saying about the DR-Z4S, the off-road one, is it is not an enduro bike. It's a trail bike. And trail bike's a different thing, and in a lot of ways a much better thing. I love a good competition enduro bike. I love a bike that goes brap, goes fast, and gives you really excitement and constantly feels like it's trying to pull itself out of your hands. That's exciting. But for trail riding, for exploring a place, for riding new tracks I've not seen, riding the back roads in a country I've never been to, I don't need 50 horsepower and a bike that's snapping at the leash everywhere. I need something docile, calm, easy to ride, chilled enough to ride all day at 50, 60 mile an hour. That's a completely different thing, and something that's sort of missing in the motorcycle world at the moment. The sort of middleweight trail bike category in the 90s was massive, and then one by one they all dropped out, and no one's really filled the void. The closest thing currently is probably Honda's CRF 300L, which is impossible to talk about this bike without referencing that one.
And this takes what was good about that and steps it up a bit with a bit more power, a bit more capability in the chassis, a bit more ability to hold speed on a motorway. I think for the right person, for the person who wants a lightweight, traily bike, they're not fussed about the adventure fashion, they just want to cover ground on all types of terrain, happily and comfortably. I think the DR-Z is going to be a massive hit. We've ridden it here at the launch on probably not as big a mix of terrain as I'd like to, but we've ridden it in fast gravel roads, slippery woods. I've done some trial stuff over some logs and hopping some ditches, and I've sort of tried to push the extremes of what the bike's for by riding it like an enduro bike, and discovered that it does okay at that. It's a little bit soft, it's a little bit steady to steer, but it copes with it really well. But then when you finish doing that and you cruise around at a chilled pace, absolutely perfect. It's soft, it's compliant. You can change the rider maps, so you've got A mode, which is an aggressive throttle map, you've got B, which is a less aggressive, and C, which is super soft. So you can dial it up to your skill level, experience, and it just purrs around, and it's such a nice bike to plod along on. And it's difficult for me because that's not an exciting headline. That's not, wow, this bike's amazing, I did a backflip at 8,000 miles an hour and my pants caught fire. Like, you can't say that about a DR-Z. What you can say is it's a lovely bike and it's a great bike for cruising around on. So if you're after something and you've not got the fashion about it and you've not got the ego and this requirement to be one of these twin-cylinder adventure bike heroes, not picking on them, I'm fully guilty of that too. But if you just want a brilliant bike to chug around on cover ground and do as much or as little off-road as you want, I'm really impressed, and I think this DR-Z is absolutely bang on the money. We also did some riding on the DR-Z4SM, which is, again, a repeat of the bike they did 15 odd years ago.
Supermoto time. So the difference with the supermoto version of the DR-Z, obviously, it has little wheels. That's clear. A shorter front fork tube as well, and obviously a different setting in the fork and the shock. Slightly less travel. Bigger disc brake on the front, and you can only turn the rear ABS off. You can't turn all of the ABS off. We've been riding for a fair while at a pretty chilled pace, just sort of cruising along, 100 kph. And unlike a lot of really aggressive competition supermotos, it actually rides well at a cruisy pace. It doesn't need you to be burying the front wheel into the tarmac with the brakes to get it to turn it. It sort of cruises along really nicely, and it kind of brings to the supermoto party the same vibe that the regular S brings to the trail party. It's got that kind of, it's not hardcore, it's not edgy, it's not this wild, angry, fire-breathing bike. It's just a nice, chilled supermoto. It's squishy, it's comfortable. You'd feel quite happy bombing down a gravelly back road on it. And then when you want to party, it's got a little bit left in the tank to throw around, but it's not this sort of hardcore pointy supermoto thing.
And the SM's an interesting one because where the trail bike, that market has disappeared and been sorely missed. The supermoto bikes, they sort of died a death because they were impractical, uncomfortable, often unreliable. I'm not talking about the Suzuki ones here, I'm talking about the competition-based stuff. And it got to a point where we all just decided to ride other stuff that was more useful. And then in recent years, it's had a bit of a reignition. You've got the KTM 690, you've got the Ducati, the new single-cylinder Ducati. And those two bikes have moved what can be done with a road-going supermoto a long way from what it was when the last DR-Z4SM was out. Now, the problem is for that bike, calling it a supermoto and immediately means you start grouping it in with those things, even though they're considerably more expensive, and it's not as fast, and it's not as sophisticated, and it's not as stiff or poised on the road. So it feels like you want to give it a bit of a kicking for being a bit too soft and cuddly. But again, in the same way that the off-road one's not an enduro bike, that's not a competition supermoto. That is a trail bike with road tyres on it. It's a trail bike for people who like the sit-up, duff, single-cylinder engine thing, but don't want to ride an old man cruiser, they don't want to ride an adventure bike, and they don't want this new generation of super revvy single-cylinder 400cc bikes that seem to be coming from every manufacturer over the world. For those people, that 4SM is perfect for cruisy riding, enjoying some twisty, bumpy back roads, taking on a gravel track or two, and blatting around the city. If you treat it like that, it is actually very, very good. But if you're looking for a gnarly, spiky Suzuki competition road-going supermoto, it really isn't it.
Today, we got some playtime with the DR-Z4SM, and this, I think, is probably the most relevant thing on this bike, because it's not a supermoto you're going to go and race. It's a bike you're going to play and mess around and learn new skills on. And finding yourself a quiet car park and mucking around on one of these is about as much fun as you can have on a motorcycle. It's the way. It's the way to improve your skills. It's the way to get better on a bike. It's the way to just have pointless fun. And that's where this thing wins, because it's not super high maintenance. It's not super aggressive. It's easy to ride, just like all the things we said about the DR-Z4S. This does it in tarmac, guys. And that, I think, is super important. And that is where this bike is going to shine, because it's something you can ride to work, flat around the lanes, just have in your garage to ride on a Sunday down some tiny bumpy back roads and go and find places to do this on.
I spent this afternoon mucking around on that DR-Z4SM, and rather than trying to treat it like a worthy bike, go for a road ride and appreciate the fuel range and the comfy seat and all the boring things that people talk about with bikes, I've just, for want of a better word, pratted about on it. Did skids everywhere, did little mini wheelies, hops, tight turns, did some rider control stuff, some clutch control, some slow speed, some full lock circles, and giggled pretty much for 6 hours straight. That's what it's for. It's a bike that's fun, without being intimidating, without being leery, without being hand grenadey in terms of engine reliability. So I think a lot of people will probably be puzzled about what that's for. Fine, let them be puzzled, and while they're being puzzled, get out there and do skids around your local car park, because for that, it's an absolute weapon. Now, at the end of our 2 days of riding, I've come out hungry for more, because while these bikes are really, really fun to ride on the terrain we've ridden here, I want to do some miles on the off-road one. I want to do some all-day traveling. I want to do some really difficult lanes and not try and ride them fast, but just get to the end of them. I want to put a little bag on the back and go camping on it. It feels like it needs more exploring, more adventure. And the supermoto feels to me like it needs a chance to shine on some bumpy, single-track, gravel-ridden British B roads. At the moment, I'm absolutely in love with the 4S. I think it's a great bike for what it's supposed to be, and as long as you don't go into it with this competition mindset, you'll be impressed. The SM, for me, I'm currently struggling to fall in love with it. I'm a huge fan of supermotos, and I think that bike needs a little bit more of a different approach to riding absolutely flat out balls to the wall on a KTM 690, because it's not that thing. Now, one of the things that everyone's picking on at the moment with these two bikes is the £8 price tag. We've been so used to bikes coming out at super cheap prices. You know, recent years, motorcycling's had a spike of really premium expensive bikes and a massive glut of really good value motorcycles. And I think we all had in our head that this was going to be 6.5, 7 grand. So when it came out at 8, it was a bit of a shock. I still do think it is on the pricey side. However, there are a few things that I think start to justify that price tag. Number one is that ABS and traction control system.
So now we are going to do a brake test. So I've got full ABS on, or it will be once I've ridden away. That's pretty good. Yeah, that was full ABS on. That stopped pretty well on the dirt.
The other bikes that have ABS and traction control in this class that I've ridden, it's very much a basic system. It does the job, but it doesn't really help you with any sort of performance-oriented riding, and it definitely falls apart off-road. This thing, actually, off-road the ABS, I was very impressed on the terrain we've ridden here, and the way it's easy to switch on and off, the way the gravel mode traction control works, I think that justifies some of the cost. That stuff is not cheap to develop. Does it justify an £8 price tag? Not sure, we'll see. But what does matter is the DR-Z is back, and I do think it's got better with old age.
Nice.
I do think that this revamped version has hit that sweet spot in the trail bike market that we've been missing for a long time. I can't wait to get one back in the UK and put some miles on it and, yeah, do some stupid stuff, do some fun stuff, and get lost in the woods, because that's what this bike is all about.
DR-Z is back!